Welcome to Lawyer Up. Today our guest was formerly focusing on criminal defense law, and now you'll hear today why she transitioned to focus on civil rights law and why that matters to her. Part of that is due to her experience with a cop herself in a capacity as a lawyer. So you'll hear how shocking that is, and I got to know our guest from her speaking out against the comments made by our state bar president recently, this past July 2020, and why that's important for her to speak out along with other attorneys based on that. So you'll learn about what he did and collectively a significant amount of lawyers what we've done to counter that. And that's one of the reasons for this channel in the first place. So I'm excited for you to learn about that because we need to work collectively together on helping our colleagues understand what implicit bias is and how it does affect others, not just those in the profession. And we can't just shrug it off. We all need to stand up and speak out on what's happening on this type of behavior, because not only affects us as attorneys, but it trickles down to our clients, to the very people we're trying to help. Without further ado, let's dive into our interview with UA Lewis out of Houston, Texas. Okay. Well, hi, UA. We're meeting for the first time. So number one, I thank you for your time, given your workload and everything going on with that we just recently found out the past couple of weeks about our current state bar president, Larry McDougall. And so, but this is not just about him, right? There's a bigger picture on racial animus, racism, implicit bias. There's a lot to talk about, but can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm UA Lewis, and I practice under UA Lewis. I'm licensed under UA Lewis. However, my name is Yumika Lewis Piccolo. I am a civil rights attorney here in Houston, and I practice in Houston and really throughout Texas at this point. And yeah.
Well, thank you, UA. I've seen a lot of, well, not a lot, but, some of the coverage about the cases you've taken. So thank you for taking these civil rights cases, because it's not something that most people talk about or present, these kind of cases. So yes. I'm sure it's a lot of hard work. I have no idea what they are about,
yes,
from day to day.
It can be taxing for sure.
Well, if we can start the conversation on about the recent events, this podcast and channel is to speak about relevant and recent events that affect our day-to-day life. And our current state bar president, Larry McDougall, has said some comments just recently, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and also some information and Facebook posts from about 5 years ago when Black Lives Matter movement started initially. Can you give the audience a little bit more context on why this is important for us as a membership?
Right. So I first discovered these posts on this public website, the Inside Fort Bend County Courts. And it was troubling to me to see it. Really, this Facebook place where people engage with one another was it's very conservative, but it's very it's almost what I think people would describe alt-right leaning. And it was a lot of hateful things on that page as it relates to minorities, particularly Black people. And the post that caught my attention after looking at some other parts of that Facebook page was a post relating to a poll worker wearing this Black Lives Matter shirt. And on that page, under that particular post, it was just like a lot of just nasty rhetoric, throughout. It was monkeys next, they were putting monkeys up, and, that's very derogatory as it relates to Black people to put, monkeys up and things like that. So I saw those type of posts, and I saw, other posts like the normal stuff, all lives matter and all that. And then I see, just just more negativity. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that there's this post from Larry McDougall, and that name sounds very familiar to me. And when I read the post, it was about electioneering, and to me, it was almost, you're in this space where everybody's surrounding this person, and just making allegations and being nasty and mean. And then here comes our state bar president adding on to it, joining the crowd and saying things to rouse the crowd. And that's kind of how I viewed it, that he made this comment simply to arouse the crowd and say, yeah, everything you guys are saying, because he didn't denounce anything anybody was saying about this person wearing this Black Lives Matter shirt. He added to it and said, oh yeah, in my opinion, it's like, he said, oh yeah, and not only is that, what you guys are saying, I'm not going to complain about, I'm going to even show you how it's even a crime. And that's how I viewed it. It wasn't just simply an opinion, a legal opinion that he was giving. And I want to be clear, because since I was the person who spoke on this first, and the first person to call for his resignation, I was able to see a lot of things before a lot of things were deleted. And so I wanted to be clear, there was never a request for a legal opinion from him. And even when he deleted his comments from that page, that question would still remain. So, for him to say that he was just asking for, answering a legal question, a legal question that was posed, and that's just inaccurate. And it just kind of goes to show probably like his shame in doing it to begin with.
Well, thank you for sharing that context. Actually, for myself, I didn't know that it was an open group. So that's even more alarming that anyone can see it. But at the same time, at the first, I thought it was more like a Fort Bend County for the lawyers, like a closed group. But even so, regardless, open or closed, this is even more alarming that our own Texas State Bar president, albeit it's only been what, 4 weeks to a month, his service term.
Right.
But a lot of it that we're talking about, especially I think the special meeting was this past Monday. I was able to listen to you speak, so thank you for taking your time on that, among others. Mostly asking for most people who spoke were asking for his resignation.
Right, that was surprising. I was, when you do something like that, when you kind of point, things that you think is problematic out, you don't know if people are going to jump up and be against you or support you, or just be indifferent. And I was really surprised at the response, and pleasantly response, even though a lot didn't get done yesterday. Right. I was really encouraged by the legal community as a whole, because it looks like there's more people that want to see our bar grow and move forward and be progressive as it relates to racial matters than there are not.
For sure. And, most people I think are more open about this and speaking up, unfortunately, because of George Floyd passing and knee to his neck. And but I'm glad they're speaking out now and just being more transparent and trying to change their ways. And so that's one of the reasons I actually created this channel, is so that we can, because most of the conversations we have, it's like in a special meeting, for example, it's all closed doors to the general public. I mean, it's actually open, but no one has the time necessarily to hear and listen to what's going on. And so maybe that's what our president thought, that it would only fall on deaf ears and no one would say anything. But I'm glad a lot of people spoke out. But going back to that Facebook post that he, quote unquote, gave his legal opinion, we've gone to law school. We know what a legal opinion analysis is. If it's a brief or something, you have, the IRAC or crack style format. This is Facebook. And you're right, no one asked for his opinion. So how could he think that, is this nonchalantly give his opinion that way? So that's very alarming that he can just rely on that.
And that is the thing that bothered me the most. Some people are saying, oh, well, it was just a legal opinion, or, this is questionable. But to me, I was looking more at the intent behind it. when you realize and you understand that it was not in relation to a legal question, it was just something he put out there, you know what his intent was behind making that statement. And if it's so gray, if it's not clear cut, then why would you just volunteer that legal opinion in the way that formulates it into being a crime? I don't think it's, honestly, I don't think it's gray. I think it is pretty clear that that is not a political statement. And, you know, so, and I think a lot of people understand that at this point, but we had to, as lawyers, there was some bouncing back and forth on whether it was or not. But, and I appreciate that. That's, you know, we love that brain exercise, and to see if, you know, if this, you know, statute should be interpreted this way or that way. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the reason why Mr. McDougall engaged in making that comment.
That's true. Thank you for making that point about the intent. And for those that I use the acronym CRACK, but you know, I'm assuming I assume for a second that the audience is only lawyers, but CRACK is, you know, our format of how we write a brief, the conclusion, and using case law analysis. You know, I was just looking on the Facebook group here that I believe you may have created about racial and diversity, racial equity and diversity. And thank you for posting your letter that you wrote to the state bar. And you've actually mentioned several points here to help remove racism from the state bar leadership or the team or the staff, you know, and how it composes its committees and whatnot, and its certain actions. You know, I've been a lawyer since 2011, and I've gone to different bar sponsored conferences and the minority conference, but there's obviously things I don't know that are going on behind closed doors. Is there something that you can share that maybe most lawyers in our membership don't know?
Well, I think one of the things that, as far as diversity is concerned, I think what people don't really know, and I think we've kind of learned, is that people are more open to diversity and don't understand when they're dismissing a certain group or what have you. They don't understand that they're doing anything wrong. And I say the majority, when I say that, I mean the majority, they don't understand they're doing anything wrong, and they're open to correction. And you shouldn't hold back on, you know, any type of correction, because they want that. They're open to it because people just want to be better, and they just don't even know sometimes when they're not being, you know, better. And
Right.
and so I would say that, you know, I remember there was a time where I'm a member of the Houston Trial Lawyers Association, and there was an instance where they were doing a happy hour for the diverse bars. Well, the two bar associations were invited, but the African American Bar Association wasn't. And when I pointed it out, I said, you know, it's nothing wrong with the African American bar not being invited. That's absolutely fine. It's no problem. But I don't think that you can, in honesty, call this a diversity bar without
Right.
us being invited. And nobody was upset, and they didn't even realize, like, wow, okay, we skipped that step. And so the
Right.
next time that, I mean, I didn't have to say a word the next time it became, that opportunity came for there to be a diverse bar inclusion. It was immediate. And so it was just the fact that, you know, you just point it out, and people don't get their feelings hurt. They just want to do better. That's all sometimes.
Thank you for sharing that story. For sure. I mean, there's significant amounts of stories or impressions of implicit bias that it's implicit for a reason, right? We just, in subconscious bias, we just don't know unless someone can point that out for us. So again, that's another reason for this podcast, so that more people can bring it up. You know, there's actually, if I can share a story myself about,
Yeah.
I guess you would call it implicit bias also, is that I was helping pro bono on a child custody case in Collin County. My client is Chinese, and she can speak in limited English and understand limited English, but even though she's been here for 10 or so years and now a US citizen, the judge had for some reason made a comment, or I don't know if it was a rhetorical question or not, but he asked, well, it would behoove me that if you're a US citizen, you've lived here for so long, that you would speak English, because we were using an interpreter. So
Mhm.
I thought, what is the relevancy of that question? We have an interpreter. It's not like we don't have one. But anyway, so
Yeah,
yeah,
that is quite alarming.
yeah,
See, and that's the type of thing that I know it's hard sometimes when we're in these small counties and it feels like the attitudes are so embedded there that it's and you just want to kind of get out of there. A lot of times it's just let
right.
me do my job and get out of there. But that's one of the times where you kind of have to grapple with, do you say something and say, Judge, let me explain this. I know you didn't probably mean this in the best way can, or do you just, suck it up and then, you know, just kind of hope that he does better next time. And that is the problem, because we as minorities shouldn't have to go through carrying that burden of, dealing with that all the time. It's all the
Mhm.
time. And it makes us less effective sometimes as lawyers, because our energy is spent in places where it shouldn't be, because of who we are. And and we could be using that energy for our actual job, and it's like we have two jobs going on at once sometimes.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're wearing a lot of hats in that sense. Yeah, and to share further, I mean, I wanted to say something. I actually spoke to opposing counsel, and she was concerned too, but we honestly did not know in what manner or forum that we could mention something to the judge.
Right.
Opposing counsel in this situation, she's East Asian as well, Asian American. But anyway, everything that's come about this state bar president, it's clear now, at least in my opinion too, that the forum is a state bar at the leadership level, starting at the top and then the board of directors. So you're exactly right. I like all your points here that you've listed on your letter. Is there any point here in particular that you like to mention?
On the letter, let's see. um
Let's see here. It's
I don't know,
page
it's so
three I'm
long.
looking at.
It was so long. It was longer. I had to bring it back some, but I just really, I felt like I had an obligation to follow through, since I didn't think it would be fair for me to throw a rock and then run. I felt obligated to see all this through, and so that's why I really took the time to write the letter and just kind of see you know what can come of it. I really honestly didn't know what point of the letter would resonate with anybody. And I think different points are resonating with different people.
Right.
But it was important for me to lay out the demands. And I think that's the part of the letter that I am most proud about, because I remember a long time ago, and I don't want to be controversial when I say this, but I
Sure.
remember it was just unheard of for people to accept a boy growing up and then saying, I feel like a woman inside, so I'm going to identify as that. And I remember just people just not understanding that, or grasping what was going on in that person's head. But now I look at society has progressed so much that it actually was it's bold enough for that movement to go forward, and people are finally accepting it. And that is a bold move to say, accept this,
Mhm.
accept my gender as being something different, and after all these years is now accepted. So it gives me kind of it's funny because before I say this, I want to say that something else. It's funny that I'm saying this, because usually we say that the African American community has always led in civil rights in changing things. But in this instance, I look at that as the transgender community showing people you can make bold demands and people will respond. And so that's where my demands come from. I thought it was important to make some very bold demands, and maybe the outside world may not look at my demands as being bold, but we're in a conservative
Sure.
occupation, so I think that they're pretty bold demands,
Right.
like
Hmm.
the
It's
zero
like
zero.
precedent. It takes a while to change it. So that's true.
Yeah, and my demanding. I think one of my favorites is the investigation on diverse practices in law firms, and also the reparations, and to do research on how there can be reparations, namely for descendants of slaves in Texas, who had to remain being slaves, or enslaved as people. I got to be careful with that, because I don't like to refer to Black people as slaves. They're just being
Right.
enslaved.
Right.
um, in Texas, 2 years after, there was it was illegal. So I think that there could be a good argument for reparations for that 2 year period for descendants of Black slaves. And I like the state bar to research that and put a committee together and help formulate a claim on that. Um, Also, I think that the removal of all the Confederate relics is important. And that was a part of my demand as well. We don't want to go to the courthouses throughout Texas and still see these things. I don't want to walk into a courtroom and feel uncomfortable because you have some Confederate general's picture up on the wall there. So
Well, you're absolutely right, and I mean, my daughter's only 21 months as of yesterday, so I just think about it. What would I do if if the situation involves a parent, right? So, in parent-child relationship, and we go into a courthouse with my daughter. When she grows up, she's going to look at that statue or that plaque and say, "Oh, what is this?" And so that's our future generation, right? So having to, I mean, they should know the history so they can make better actions for sure. But it's
yeah,
like a celebratory way when you have a statue. I think some
it
people just don't understand that for some reason.
that's exactly you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what people are not getting. It is to celebrate that person, and they shouldn't be celebrated. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you 100%. But another thing, one of my other demands I would love to see implemented is a hotline, where kind of like our the state bar has a hotline for lawyers. It's an ethics hotline where you can call and you can get an opinion and some help on our whenever we're dealing with clients or what have you,
Right.
or another issue, you can call and get some advice. I think there should be a hotline that supports discrimination. Like if you're dealing with discrimination somewhere in some way, shape, or form, or even to report, misconduct in that way. Eh,
Yeah, actually, that's the when I was just scrolling through your list, that was the one that hit I like the most, actually, and that reminded me. You mentioned the ethics hotline. I also think of the TLAP, Texas Legal Assistance Program, for those who have a
Yeah,
drug substance abuse problem. And and I always mention that. So it makes sense to have a hotline for this if someone feels that they need to report misconduct in this way.
in that way, it takes out it. So, like for example, when you had that issue in Nowhere, Texas, I don't know, no disrespect to people. What is it? Would you say Collin County?
Collin County, yeah, in
Yeah.
Plano, Allen area. No
So yeah,
worries.
sorry.
I know Houston and Dallas, we have like a unspoken rivalry.
Yes. But if you're in a small county, and not Collin County, but small county, and
Sure.
you just bring something like that up, that's the way you can call that hotline. And maybe it might not be your complaint that needs to be addressed with that judge, but if that judge has a collection of complaints, then maybe that judge can be addressed by the bar based on the multitude of complaints, and just say, without really pointing out the actual lawyer. And so you don't have to worry about retaliation for your client or yourself. So I think that it might fit in that
That's a
regard.
great idea. I think about, when Justice Kavanaugh, who's going through his confirmation process, and the ABA said he's not in good standing. I think of that when if there was, accumulation of reports to keep judges accountable, at least on a state level somehow, for sure.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think it would make all the difference if that judge were to be nominated later for a federal judiciary seat. And it also would keep that judge in check if they want to be nominated, because they know that there's going to be records kept on them. And so they know that it could affect their opportunities going forward. And so, that could be valuable.
Absolutely, that is true. I also like this. Well, at least 1 hour approved diversity and inclusion CLE, and you and I know. I mean, we have to have a lot of CLEs, right, year to year.
Yes.
One hour is very modest
Yeah.
because this topic can go on for a long time, right?
Right.
But
I think this podcast you're doing right now could, I think you should probably
yeah,
get
I've been another attorney mentioned that to me, and I got to figure out the process. I think that'd be helpful for
Mhm.
self-approved CLE,
Yeah.
self-reporting. That'll work. Let's see here. Well, you shared some information about your experiences as an attorney in terms of your um, experience with a police officer, um,
Yeah.
right? And that's one story, and then I don't want to forget, but also another one regarding your own client, right? Your representing client, and
Yeah. I,
you
I
shared
have
a video
I
about
have
that.
a lot of, yeah, I have a lot of, so I can give you a little bit of background on how much time we have remaining, but I can give you a little background
Sure.
on kind of my story. So I became a civil rights lawyer in 2015 officially. Before then, I did personal injury. I practiced personal injury and criminal defense. And I had a criminal defense client. His name is Jesse Jacobs. He was a 32-year-old white gay male. And we struck up what we thought was a pretty good deal for him, which was to do 30 days in jail. He had already done the overnight stuff, so he had credit for 2 days. So he would have ended up being in jail for 13 days. So we got the deal together. We turned him in to the Galveston jail. It was him, his mother, myself, and obviously him. We all went down to turn him in for the time frame, and he had a few medications that he took that he was prescribed at the time, and so his mother and I went over to the jail after we turned him in at court, and then we met them over at the jail. So then we gave them all his medications, and they took account of him all and all that good stuff. And then we left, and that was we were done. That was on a Friday. On Tuesday, his mom called and she said, "I haven't heard from Jess, since I want to say Sunday,
Mm.
and I don't know what's going on." And I said, "Well, let's call and find out." And then we were just told, that he's doing fine, and I needed a HIPAA request to actually find out any health information about him.
Right, and that can take a while.
Yeah, and well, now I do know that with my criminal case, I always make whoever's going to jail, I always make sure they leave a HIPAA request signed.
Right.
That's in a power of attorney now. But anyhow, fast forward, hadn't heard from him again on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. She got a call, and she was there at the visiting room when she got the call. She had to visit him, and her and his dad, and they said that they were rushing him to ICU. And I did not know what was going on. They called me, and come to find out, the medication we dropped off, they didn't give him any of it. He went into severe withdrawals because he had been on Xanax for 10 years through his psychiatrist.
Right.
And he went through severe withdrawals, and so he ended up going into cardiac arrest, and he died. That was my first civil rights case.
Wow.
His family insisted upon me doing the case, and I can't thank them enough. They're like my family now, but I can't thank them enough for putting that burden on me, because it was a burden. I didn't know anything about civil rights.
Right.
Um,
Right. And
I
I mean, they had a lot of trust in you, especially when you represent for the criminal case. So I found that a lot.
yeah.
I have to tell people I can't take that second case because I don't know anything about it. But yeah.
Yeah, and and then I was invested in that, and I said, you know what, I have to win this. So I just really dug in deep and learned the law, and then ever since then I've been a civil rights lawyer. That was my very first case. But so fast forward into that, as now that I'm officially a civil rights lawyer, I encounter a cop on a discovery request. I called the police. I called them because they were the place we were at doing the discovery request. The guy was kind of harassing my co-counsel, and he snatched his phone from him because he was recording. So we called the police, and we
Oh,
waited for the police. And then the police arrived. It was a female officer for Houston Police Department. She came, and it was it was it was an interesting turn of events. It was just really strange how she just kind of shifted everything and turned her focus on me.
huh.
And I must admit that there was a battle of the wills going on, because she was demanding that I leave a public sidewalk and go sit in my car, and I would not. And then and because I was just really shocked that she was just treating me that way. And I said, I'm going to call the captain on you. And she
Oh,
that just upset her. When I told her I was going to call her captain, she said, well, you call whoever you want. I said, I'm calling down. And then when I'm walking off the call, she just ran up behind me and cuffed, and said, you're under arrest, and cuffed
oh
me.
wow.
And
Goodness.
so, yeah, but the funny thing is, when I saw her acting kind of weird, I started recording the interaction, and she didn't know it. So she
Oh,
put all the lies in the police report, and that that made me understand uniquely what clients go through, what my clients go through
right.
when they're the cop is lying in the report. And I think that experience just really opened up the eyes of other people too, because
Right.
you can actually see the video of what happened versus what was in the report. And even me being a lawyer, I had to go to court for 3 months to get it dismissed.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
I definitely sued. I definitely sued her
right.
in court, and I definitely that was a little bit, something I wasn't too excited about, going in front of my same judges that I do my cases in front of. But it was valuable because the judges knew me,
Right.
and I appreciate, and I haven't, the judge that wrote the opinion on my case. Um, I'm thankful for her.
Hmm.
She really let me know that I didn't do anything wrong, and she heard my story and she believed me, and her opinion was pretty scathing, and it was what I needed.
That's good. That's good. You had a successful outcome as well, and have people, the stakeholders like judges, understand to some extent, right, the situation, and um, basically push the other side back to where they should be.
Right.
Um, and I read and listened to the video that you shared that actually you didn't really want to file the lawsuit, but in some scenarios like this, you have to file it so that that police department, they know what they've done wrong. So,
Right. But we can have a whole different show on that, because
I'm sure.
it never works that way. They don't learn.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, we try what we can legally, but then
Yeah,
it's kind of like a protective order, right? I mean, you only have it on paper, but then when you need it the most, it's
exactly.
sometimes too late.
Perfect scenario. That's a perfect scenario. I mean,
Right. And that's a whole other discussion as well. But um, let's see here. Well, part of our audience are young attorneys coming out of law school, or maybe making a transition to a different career. I mean, essentially like what you did, right? PI
yeah.
to civil rights. And I'm glad you transitioned because you've done a lot of good work. I've noticed uh, in my short time following you. And so, if you could turn back the clock to when you were coming out of law school, do you have any advice that you could give to now law students, for example?
Sure. I think the number one advice, and I think I would say I would gear it more towards somebody that wants to come out and start their own practice. Um, and what I would say is follow your heart and do what you think is important, and the money will follow. Don't chase money in this. The money will follow if you do the right thing, and then you can name your price after that, and it's less stressful, and you'll be happy. And at the end of the day, always be able to, with all the cases and all your work, be able to look yourself in the mirror and be able to sleep good at night. That's what I would say.
That's great advice. I mean, yeah, because it's sometimes hard, at least I can speak in my opinion, sometimes hard to go to sleep if, we try to take on that burden from folks and, thinking about how do we pay the bills. So there's a lot to worry about. But yeah, you're right. If we focus on the case itself, it'll come through for
Yeah.
sure.
The money will definitely come. There will be some hard times, but just know that it's gonna pay off. Just, as long as you're doing your best, and you're, putting in the work, it definitely, people notice, people pay attention, and they'll trust in you when it's time for the big stuff.
Yeah,
That you,
I have to say I agree with that. Absolutely. Well, UA, it's been a pleasant conversation, and it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. And
my
we can
pleasure.
talk, like I said, we can talk so much more, but we'll love to have you on the show again in the future. And
I'll
keep
be
doing
happy.
what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and thank you for your program. I think it's important, and I think people will get valuable information from here, and hopefully we'll be around for a long time.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. Okay, UA.
Okay,
Well, you have a great rest of the day.
okay, you too. Bye bye.